I woke up long before the sun rose, the house still wrapped in the soft silence of dawn. The ticking clock on the wall felt louder than usual, echoing in the emptiness of my room. For months I had felt it growing, a distance, subtle but sharp, like a thin sheet of ice forming between me and my own family. My son and daughter-in-law were kind, always polite, always respectful, but lately, something felt missing. Conversations were shorter, dinners quieter, and smiles, those warm, familiar smiles, did not reach their eyes anymore. I couldn't explain it, but a heaviness clung to my heart. So that morning, in a moment of impulse and wounded pride, I made a decision that felt both foolish and necessary. I would pretend to travel. Not to punish them, not to test them cruelly, but to see if my absence made even the smallest ripple in their world. I pulled out a small suitcase from the closet, the same one I had used years ago when life still felt full of possibilities. Its zipper squeaked sharply, startling even me. I began placing random items inside, an old scarf, a faded sweater, a book I had already read twice. It didn't matter what I packed, I wasn't going anywhere. Still, my hands moved with purpose, as if acting out a role in a play I never wanted to perform. As I folded the scarf, my fingers trembled. Will they notice? I whispered into the quiet room. Will they care? My reflection in the mirror looked back at me, a woman who had given her entire life to her family, yet now felt like a guest in her own home. My eyes glistened, and I quickly wiped away a tear before it could betray my true feelings. When I stepped into the living room, the house slowly came alive. The kettle whistled, chairs scraped, footsteps crossed the hallway. My son entered first, still sleepy. "Mama, you're up early," he murmured, half smiling. "I'm traveling today," I announced softly, forcing cheer into my voice. "A small trip, just to clear my mind." He blinked, surprised. "Today?" Without telling us. Before he could ask more, my daughter-in-law approached with her gentle footsteps. She looked at my suitcase, then at me. Her lips parted slightly. "You didn't mention any trip." I shrugged lightly. It was a sudden decision. Their eyes exchanged a quick, unreadable glance. Maybe concern, maybe confusion, or maybe, my aching heart feared, relief. My son walked to me and placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. "Be safe, Mama. Call us when you arrive." His words were kind, yet something inside me sagged. So it was true. They didn't ask where, why, or how long. They simply let me go. As the door closed behind me and the cool morning air brushed against my cheeks, I whispered a quiet prayer. Let the truth reveal itself, whatever it may be. Little did I know, the truth waiting for me was nothing like the one I feared. The moment I stepped outside and the cool morning air touched my skin, I felt the weight of the lie settle in my chest. I walked down the street slowly, ensuring they would not suspect a thing, before circling back through the small alley behind our house. The narrow path was overgrown with weeds, its stones cracked and forgotten, much like how I had begun to feel in recent months. The storage room sat behind the kitchen, a place no one ever bothered to enter. It smelled faintly of old newspapers, dry wood, and the dusty memories of years long gone. This cramped space would be my hiding spot, my window into a world where I hoped to discover whether my presence mattered. I slipped inside, leaving only the smallest gap in the door for air and sound. The room was dimly lit by the faint sunbeam that pushed through the old curtain. I sat on an overturned crate and listened, every heartbeat loud in my own ears. At first, the house was silent, too silent. Then I heard the soft clinking of cups, the low murmur of voices. My son's footsteps were unmistakable. I had always recognized them. Firm, heavy, a little fast when he was anxious. Did she really go alone? He asked, his voice muffled through the wall. Yes, my daughter-in-law replied softly. She seemed restless these past weeks. Restless. If only she knew the storm inside me. I heard my son sigh, long and deep. I hope she's not upset with us. Upset. I covered my mouth with trembling fingers. So they had noticed my silence, my distance. I had assumed they hadn't. And I hope she likes the surprise, my daughter-in-law added. Her voice held a sweetness I had nearly forgotten. A surprise. I leaned closer to the gap in the door, but their voices drifted away as they moved toward the living room. A mixture of confusion and curiosity swirled in me, but I stayed silent, listening. My breath steadied as if my lungs feared making too much noise. The house began to move with the rhythm of their routine, cabinets opening, water running, chairs scraping. I listened to every sound with the intensity of someone trying to decode a language long forgotten. Hours passed. At times, I felt foolish hiding in the tiny space like a criminal in my own home. Yet something held me there: fear, hope, longing for truth. All three blended into a strange kind of courage. As the sky darkened and the faint orange glow seeped through the crack, I heard my daughter-in-law enter my empty room. Her steps were slow, almost reverent, as if she were entering a sacred space. She whispered something I couldn't fully make out, then I heard the soft rustle of paper and the gentle placement of something on my table. My heart thudded. Were they cleaning, preparing, or mourning my absence already? I clenched my fists and breathed deeply. What would I discover if I stayed hidden longer? As night settled in, I realized this: sometimes the only way to see the truth is to watch from the shadows. And I was ready to keep watching, no matter how much it hurt. Night passed slowly, like a long breath the world held but never released. I barely slept in the cramped storage room. Every sound, every footstep beyond the thin wall kept me awake, alert, and trembling with expectations I could not name. By morning, the air felt different, charged with something I could not yet understand. It was mid-afternoon when I heard the sound of my room's door opening again. The soft, careful steps told me it was my daughter-in-law. She always walked like she didn't want to disturb the air around her, as though every movement carried meaning. I leaned forward, close enough to the crack in the door that I could smell the faint scent of fresh paint drifting from my room. My heart started beating faster. Then I heard her voice, gentle, thoughtful, carrying a tenderness that caught me off guard. She always loved these flowers, she whispered. Paper rustled. Something was set down gently, as if she was afraid it would break. I knew that sound. Flowers. Fresh ones. My favorite chrysanthemums. A lump formed in my throat, and my breath hitched. I hadn't received flowers in years. Not since my husband passed away. Why now? Do you think she'll like it? She asked softly. There was silence for a moment before my son's familiar footstep entered the room. I hope so, he replied, voice thick with unspoken emotion. She's been sad. Maybe this will show her we care. Show me they care. I pressed a hand to my mouth to stop a cry from escaping. The walls felt like they were spinning, my head light with surprise. For months, I thought they were cold, distant, uninterested. And now I found them standing in my empty room, talking about me with a tenderness I thought no longer existed. My son sighed, a deep, weary sound only a mother can recognize. Do you think she feels lonely? He murmured. My daughter-in-law's voice broke slightly. I do. And I feel terrible. I thought giving her space was the right thing. I didn't want her to feel controlled or watched. I didn't realize space can feel like distance. Her honesty pierced me. She wasn't cruel. She was trying. Maybe in the wrong way, but with the right heart. The bed creaked as they sat down. I want her to know this is her home, my son said quietly. Not just a place she stays. A home. A warmth spread across my chest. Painful, overwhelming, beautiful. I closed my eyes and felt tears spill down my cheeks silently. My daughter-in-law sniffed, as though fighting back tears of her own. We'll finish the room today. By the time she returns, everything will be perfect. Perfect. For me. The realization struck me hard. All this time, the silence I feared was not rejection, it was preparation. They weren't ignoring me. They were planning something loving, something thoughtful, something I never expected. For the first time in months, hope stirred inside me like a sleepy bird stretching its wings. And in that tiny, dusty storage room, hidden in the shadows, I discovered a truth far greater than I had imagined. I was loved, quietly, imperfectly, but deeply. And I had never been as invisible as I feared. The next morning began with the unexpected sound of drilling, sharp, rhythmic, echoing through the walls like a heartbeat. I jolted awake in the storage room, disoriented for a moment, before I remembered where I was and why I was hiding. Dust floated in the narrow beam of light, shimmering like tiny stars as the noise grew louder. They were working in my room. Again, curiosity pulled me toward the tiny gap in the door. Through it, I saw the blurry outline of my son kneeling on the floor, a toolbox beside him. His hair was messy, his t-shirt stained with paint, and sweat glistened on his forehead. He looked younger somehow, like the boy I used to scold for leaving his shoes untied. "Hand me the screws, please," he called. My daughter-in-law appeared beside him, holding a small packet. Her hands were equally messy, streaked with light yellow paint. She knelt beside him and asked, "Do you think the shelves are straight?" He laughed softly. "No idea. Your eyes are better. Check." She tilted her head, squinting at the wall. Maybe a little to the left." They worked together like a perfectly practiced team. Not annoyed, not tired, not forced, willing, happy, even. For me, I watched her climb onto a small stool to hang the new curtains, soft, warm-colored ones that reminded me of the ones I had long admired in store windows but never bought for myself. She smoothed the fabric gently, then stepped back to admire her work. "It looks cozy," she murmured. "Like her." My breath caught. Cozy. Like me. They still saw me that way. My son stood and rubbed his back. "I want her to feel safe here," he said. "Like she belongs. No more feeling like a guest." A painful realization struck me. I had made myself a guest. I had withdrawn, stepped back, assumed distance without asking for clarity. And they had noticed. I watched my daughter-in-law unpack a small, beautifully carved wooden chair, the kind my late husband used to make. She whispered, I had it made for her. She always said her chair squeaked. She remembered that. The chair was simple but elegant, the wood polished until it reflected the sunlight. My son ran his hand over it and smiled. "She'll love it." Next came the bookshelf. They carefully arranged my old novels, the stories I had once lost myself in. My daughter-in-law wiped each cover gently, almost reverently, as if she were handling treasures. To me, they were. But I had never imagined they mattered to her. Then she brought out a small knitted blanket. My blanket. The one I thought I had lost. "I fixed the hole," she said softly. "She'll be warm." My throat tightened painfully. They weren't just renovating a room. They were stitching warmth back into my life, piece by piece, gesture by gesture. As the sun dipped low and the room glowed with soft amber light, they stepped back, side by side, hands touching lightly. "Perfect," my son whispered. "Perfect for her," she replied. Watching them, love blooming quietly like dawn, I realized something. They were not creating a room. They were creating a home for me. And I had never expected such love to be waiting quietly behind the walls of my own house. I waited until evening, until the last golden threads of sunlight drifted across the yard and the house settled into that peaceful hush that comes right before dinner. My heart pounded in my chest the entire time. I knew the truth now. Their silence was not neglect, but preparation. Their distance was not coldness, but effort. Still, I had no idea how they would react when I revealed that I had never actually left. At last, when the drilling stopped and the house grew quiet, I stepped out of the storage room. My legs wobbled from the long hours of sitting, and my breath trembled as if I were about to confess a sin. The hallway was empty. My newly renovated room glowed softly with warm light, spilling out into the corridor. I took one hesitant step, then another, my fingers grazing the wall for balance. The door to my room stood wide open. Inside, my son and daughter-in-law were bent over the bed, smoothing the knitted blanket, my blanket, across the soft new sheets. Their expressions were tired but full of quiet satisfaction. I stood in the doorway, unable to speak. My son sensed movement first. He turned his head casually, and froze. His eyes widened, his lips parted, and the blanket slipped from his hands. "Mama," he whispered, as if afraid I might disappear. You didn't travel." My daughter-in-law spun around, her face flushing with shock. "Mama, you're here. What? How?" I raised a shaking hand. "I never left," I said finally, my voice breaking under the weight of the confession. "I stayed. In the storage room." They stared at me, confused, hurt, and worried all at once. I didn't want to lie, I continued, tears already spilling down my cheeks. I wanted to see if I mattered. If my absence would make a difference. I thought you had grown distant. I thought you didn't need me anymore." My son's face crumpled. He rushed forward and caught me in a trembling embrace. His arms were strong, desperate, as if he had been waiting months to hold me like this. Mama, no, he choked. You matter more than you will ever understand. I'm so sorry you felt alone. We noticed. We just didn't know how to help. My daughter-in-law joined the embrace, her voice thick with tears. We wanted to surprise you. We wanted to give you comfort, warmth, a room that felt like yours. We thought we were doing something good. I held both of them as tightly as my old arms allowed. You were, I whispered. I saw everything. The flowers, the paint, the bookshelf. All of it, and it was more love than I expected. They pulled back, their eyes glossy but shining with relief. You are our family, my son said firmly, cupping my face in his hands. This house is not complete without you. In that moment, surrounded by warmth, sincerity, and the renovated room filled with love, my heart felt fuller than it had in years. Sometimes, the deepest truths are uncovered not by distance, but by courage, the courage to see, to listen, and to understand. And, that night, we understood each other completely. A family, healed, a home, reborn, a heart, finally at peace.